Welcome everybody. Come on in. So our first, for everybody, our kind of larger audience, at least first evening presentation of 2025. So congratulations, uh, you made it. So hopefully it was a good break for everybody. And I think for a lot of people this time of year is kind of like, all right, I should start thinking about this stuff. College is actually coming. Let me get my head out of the sand. I can't ignore it any longer. So hopefully that's part of your motivation for being here tonight. And I think, and I feel confident because we've done variations of this before, the get here is that you're leaving here a little bit more in the know because I think, in my opinion, one of the hardest things about this whole college process, I think, especially on the admission side, certainly on the financial side too, but like, where the hell do I start, right? Like, I don't, what, it would just tell me where to start, because it can be a little bit overwhelming, right? So I think that'll be a big get here, for you all tonight as well, where you'll have some direction. So a couple things. We'll do some brief introductions for those of you that are new. And by the way, help us out. A couple things that's always fun for us to know. Put in the chat where you at in the country here, or the world. We're always very well represented geographically. And then tell us the graduating class of your student. I think we have a predominantly 26s here, but I'm sure we got some go-getters, some 27s and 28s as I'm seeing here. But yeah, largely 26s, and again, as always, all over the place, which is fun for us. We're a little bit boring here. Oftentimes, we're spread out geographically on our team as well. Not so much tonight. We're both north of Boston. I don't know what, 10 miles apart, 15 miles apart, something like that, Brian. So you're
If
stuck
that.
with the Boston boys tonight. So bear with us if that doesn't sit well with you. So hopefully we'll provide value. Um, Housekeeping stuff. This is going to be recorded. Everybody's going to get the recording. This is the second part of kind of a two-part series here. Part one was before the new year. We really focused on the financial piece. I'm going to do a quick kind of refresher of that in the beginning of the presentation tonight. But tonight is really Brian's show, that's really admissions focused. That's going to be the crux of tonight. Everybody's going to get the recording. Um, we want you to be engaged. We want you to ask questions, right? Whichever one of us is not talking is going to be staring at that Q&A, doing our best to answer your questions. We'll answer all, we won't get to all of them, right? We're just kind of outgunned here. And then sometimes we would just need more information to be able to give you an accurate answer, right? So don't, all that's to say, don't take it personal if we don't get to your question, but please fire at will. And please put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. Sometimes we'll say jump in the chat and put this, that, and the other, like you guys just did. But by and large, ask your questions, or I shouldn't say by and large. Please ask all your questions in the Q&A because that's where we'll be focused. And that, again, that'll be recorded and archived, and you guys will get that in the recording as well. So, by way of brief introduction, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm the founder of College Aid Pro. I've been doing this for a hot minute here. As a matter of fact, the 2025 marks the 20th year, that all have been doing this, which is just wild to say out loud. It's all I know professionally. It's about 90% of all I know, period. Basically, is this whole specifically financial aid and scholarship world. But I think with that, it just comes with a lot of frontline experience, right? I've worked with every college that you've heard of. I've seen just about every type of family dynamic you can imagine. And again, I share that just to say this is a great place to get your questions answered. So please take advantage. And again, I like to kind of, and again, you know me, Brian, how humble I am. I like to think of myself as the Tom Brady of financial aid and scholarships.
Thank
But
you.
Brian Ford is the Tom Brady of the whole admissions process. And he's a little bit of a unicorn from my perspective because he has been on every side of the desk. He's been a director of admissions at Boston University, among other colleges. He's read upwards of 100,000 college applications and essays, etc. He's read for the UCs in addition to BU. He's been in these rooms, in these committees, of admissions counselors at these really tough schools that are making these decisions. Is this kid getting in or is this kid getting in? Right. And what is the difference? Because it appears that all their tangibles are identical. Same GPA, same class rank, same test scores, similar types of high schools. So what are the difference makers? And that's kind of what he wants to talk a little bit about, certainly tonight. And then he's also worked on the other side of the desk. Right now, he's the director of college counseling at Boston College High School, which is one of the more prestigious Catholic boys high schools, obviously here in the Boston area. But Brian, why don't you say hi quick yourself, and then we'll kind of get cooking on the content.
Yeah, I was gonna make the joke that we're us Patriots fans. We're a little sore right now, so no Gerard Mayo jokes in the chat. But no, I've similar to Matt. I've spent kind of my entire career in and around college admissions. Spent the beginning on the college side, as Matt said, traveling around the country for a number of different schools, most notably BU, meeting with thousands of students, working them through the process, getting them enrolled, getting them excited about that next step, and then realized that was really my favorite part of the job was getting them excited. And so I've spent kind of the latter half of my career on the high school side at a number of prestigious high schools. In and around the Boston area. Currently serve at Boston College High School, as well as obviously serving as a college admissions expert for College Aid Pro. And so it's a real joy to kind of work with students and families through the process, despite how stressful it is. And just looking forward to sharing some of my wisdom tonight.
Yeah, 100%. So, like we said, kind of lots to cover here. So we will dig in. Give me a second, and I will at least attempt to share my screen here. Okay. Um, Sorry, guys, that is the wrong button. Brian, you'd think I'd be able to know how to share a screen by now, right? One would think. Um, okay. Entire screen. There we go. I think we did it, didn't we?
We did it.
All right. So here we go, kind of part two here, guys. Again, if you're new to us, College Aid Pro, there's the mission, pretty clear, albeit challenging, right? Ending the student debt crisis. How do we do that? It's right here at the foundation. It's at the beginning of the process. People talk about student loans, forgiving student loans. Hopefully that's kind of fantasy land, but how does that prevent us from having that same problem moving forward? It doesn't. We got to make good decisions now at this stage of the game. If you didn't do this already, make sure you create. I'm putting in the chat right now. Actually, I saw that most of you did do this already, which is great. Create your free MyCap account, right? Your free collegeaidpro.com account, because when we get the question, where do we start on the financial side? Here's your answer. Don't overthink it. It's going to tell you, are you eligible for financial aid? How much? At which colleges? Who's getting a mini scholarship? How much? At which colleges? Right? Um, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it takes a lot of the guesswork and the speculation and the lack of transparency that is kind of prominent in this process. And it takes that all out of it, right? And just creates complete transparency. We like to consider ourselves a source of truth, and we're proud of that. So again, kind of our quick crash course in its from a high level in its simplest terms. What is financial aid? It's any time we're not paying full sticker price, right? So if we don't pay full sticker price at a college, which now congratulations class 2025, okay, you'll be the first class, and I know there's, again, most of you guys are 26s and below, that's going to have college cost of attendance above $100,000 a year, which is just outrageous to say out loud, but that's where we are, right? That was a joke a couple of years ago, but here we are. So there's three types of financial aid, three different ways that colleges will discount. The first two is where we want to focus our efforts because it's free money coming right off the top. Need-based grants, okay? Need-based financial aid are discounts that colleges give based on your family's financial profile and then how generous or not a certain college is in terms of giving away need-based financial aid. And again, you got to think of these colleges like private businesses because they are, and they each operate their businesses differently. And of course, we want to know, how do the colleges that we're targeting, how do they run their business, right? Merit-based scholarships. This is more your traditional, okay, in some ways the other end of the spectrum where the financial aid offices are determining how much need-based financial aid your kid should get. The admissions office is going, right, like Brian used to do. I don't care how much or how little this student's parents make. I want this kid to come to my school, right? And I want to give them a financial incentive to come here. That's a merit-based scholarship. So obviously, we want to target schools where our kid is likely to receive a meaningful amount of merit-based scholarships. And then finally, the last type of quote unquote financial aid, self-help financial aid. this is kind of a sexy term for loans, right? There's a place for it. Everybody that completes a FAFSA is entitled to up to $27,000, okay, in self-help financial aid. But again, that's still a loan. It's a loan we recommend every single family take advantage of, even if you don't need it for various reasons, which we won't get into tonight. But let's be clear, this is not free money that's coming off the top. Okay. So you heard me say this a second ago. These colleges are private businesses. They're businesses, right? Don't, yes, they're nonprofit institutions, okay, but that just means they don't pay taxes. Make no mistake about it. These are very sophisticated, multi-billion dollar corporations, okay? And it gets complicated, right? We're applying to 12 schools and they all run, and again, these businesses run differently. So anytime there's a universal formula, we want to get really comfortable in understanding what that is and how we fit into that. So one nice thing about need-based financial aid is every single college uses the exact same formula to determine every single student's eligibility for need-based aid. Now, there's a bazillion variations within that, but let's at least get comfortable with how it works at a high level. And that is the cost of attendance. So again, this sticker price. So let's say $100,000 minus the SAI, the Student Aid Index. This is a dollar amount that gets assigned to the student based on your family's financial profile, so largely driven by income and assets. If that dollar amount is less than the cost of attendance, okay, now you are eligible. Okay, the difference there is how much you're eligible for potentially in need-based financial aid, potentially being the key underlying word there. Because let's just say, for example, you apply to a school, it's $100,000. Your SAI is $60,000. So now you're eligible for $40,000 worth of need. Who's going to pay for that? Now that's where it depends on the college. Generally speaking, we're always paying that 60. That's our minimum. Some schools, they meet 100% of need. So you only pay, you pay 60, right? But other schools, they meet 50% of need. So you pay 60 plus the amount of need that they don't meet. That school costs you $80,000, right? And again, there's a gigantic spectrum from one school to the next. And again, just set up your accounts because you'll find out exactly how much financial aid each of the colleges that you're thinking about give or don't give. Now, I can just tell you based on the amount of folks that are on the call, based on the regions that you are in certain parts of the country, right? There's going to be a percentage of you that you're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. And there's no magic wand that I can wave or Brian can wave or anybody can wave that's going to change that, right? It's just how the formula works, okay? And one of the biggest flaws in this formula, and there's a fairly large list here, is that they really don't take cost of living into account, right? So, again, Brian and I just live right outside of Boston. It's pretty expensive to live here, right? We would have a different, I think, lifestyle if we lived in rural, South Dakota. Okay, we'd probably be famous there, Brian, right? We're men of the people here. So, all that's to say, again, just because you're not eligible for need-based financial aid, that doesn't mean you're wealthy, right? Or ready to start cutting checks for $100,000 a year times 4 years times 3 kids. So how are you going to get discounts? The number one most reliable way is to determine which colleges are going to give you merit-based scholarships. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in a minute here, exactly how we do it and how we coach it, but a couple talking points before I do. Number one, some of these colleges, regardless of your financial aid eligibility, if you want to be considered for scholarships, you have to complete the financial aid applications. You have to do the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Doesn't matter if you're a billionaire, okay? And shame on you if you're a billionaire tuning in tonight, okay? But a school like NYU is a great example, right? They're one of the most popular schools each year, and when I say popular, I mean just quantity of applications that they receive worldwide. They do give merit-based scholarships, albeit it's very competitive, but you cannot be considered for those unless you've done the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Okay. In kind of the same breath here, or the other side of that coin, not every college offers scholarships. And this is somewhat new, right? A lot of you, the last time you even thought about anything college or were in the weeds was your own experience in going to college, right? And this wasn't a thing when you went to college. Every college offered scholarships. Now there's about 100 schools, and they tend to be some of the most popular schools where scholarships don't exist, right? There's not one kid on one Ivy League campus that's there on a scholarship. There's not one kid at Tufts or MIT or Middlebury or Amherst or Bowdoin or Bates that's there on a scholarship, again, because they do not exist. So as you guys are starting to put your list of schools together, you at least want to be aware, does scholarships even exist? Is it a possibility at the schools we're targeting, especially if you have one of these really high achieving kids that's targeting these types of colleges? And here's kind of the last bullet point before we get into the platform and look at some case studies here. Um, you have to apply to competing colleges. Okay. You heard me say this. I'll continue to say this. These are businesses. They're big businesses. They're sophisticated, competitive businesses. What do businesses do? They compete with one another for their products. What are colleges' products? They're the students. Okay, so it's you heard Brian say at the top. He used to work at BU. Okay, it's very common that people will come and visit Boston, and they'll visit a bunch of schools in the area. And for example, they might love BU, how it's a very urban campus. They visited Northeastern, and it just didn't. They didn't like the co-op program or whatever it happened to be. Okay, and then they'll tell us, hey, yeah, we're just going to apply to BU. And know what we're going to say? We're going to say, no, you're not. You're applying to Northeastern too. We know you hated it and you have no intention of going there, but guess what? We're going to get that offer from Northeastern. We're going to bring it back to BU and we're going to get a better deal. This is especially mission critical if you're a family that's not eligible for need-based financial aid. These are the types of strategies that you want to employ, and you have to start with that now, right? You have to start with that in the very early stages of this process. So let me bear with me for 1 second here as um, I'm going to jump into our platform here as promised. Now, again, I see that just about all of you already created your accounts here, which is awesome. If you did not, the link is in the chat. But so you see, you already know your SAI, right? When I was going over that formula a second ago, cost of attendance minus SAI equals need. You don't need to think about where you fit in that spectrum. We're telling you, these are what your SAIs are going to be. Okay. In some ways, I don't want to say that's irrelevant because it is, but ultimately what matters is what are these colleges actually going to cost you? You can put in any college in the country and we're going to tell you, here's what it's going to cost you if you get into any of these schools. Okay, if we want to click in a little further for any college, we have every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're going to tell you how much is your kid going to get at that school. So just really quickly, let's do a quick case study here. Just put in the chat, put in some of the favorite colleges that you guys are targeting. What are your, whether it's your alma mater or your kid has a definite top choice or you guys are getting ready to go visit. Put in some actual schools. Let's take a look at a couple. I'll take a look at one or two and just kind of see how they operate. Okay. So I saw Duke is one. Okay. So Duke, $94,000. We're going to go there for, 42 in change. Okay. Again, that's all dictated based on on this family. And again, this is a real family. Okay. In my little city here in Beverly, Mass. Right. That's kind of a down the fairway family in terms of income, in terms of assets. They own their home. The meaningful variable there is it's a divorced family, a split household family. Let's just look at another one here that could be interesting. Okay, opposite end of the country here. Let's look at Gonzaga. Okay. So Gonzaga, okay, that's going to be 54,000. Okay. Off of the almost $80,000 sticker price. Now, Gonzaga is an interesting one, I have to bet, because we're projecting that the student's going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, but a $22,000 merit-based scholarship. You won't get both, okay? You'll get the higher of the two. Why that's relevant, though, is that merit-based scholarships, you're going to keep those for all 4 years, so long as the kid does okay in school. But we can set our watch. We're getting that $22,000 for all 4 years, whereas need-based grants, that number could go up and down as income goes up and down, right? So it's just, again, something that we need to be aware of when we're looking at that 4-year net cost. Now, when we want to go find schools that are going to give us merit-based scholarships, we want to use this part of the platform, right? I'm in this, and I can go say there's a bazillion filters we can put in here, but I'll just choose a couple. So let's say your kid's going to be more comfortable at a smaller college and they want to be relatively close to home. And maybe they want to major in bio. Okay. I can put anything in here and then I can just say, go show me those features and rank them based on who's going to give me the most in merit-based scholarships. Right. And actually, Dickinson is a school that you just brought up for one of your students, Brian, that got an ED the other day. So Dickinson, right, for a student like this, they're going to get $43,000 regardless of how much the family's financial profile, right? Or Wheaton here at $40,000 regardless. So this is how we want to build some schools that are we know are going to give us these great deals regardless of financial aid eligibility. If we are eligible for financial aid, I can sort just based on that. Right. And here we go. Boom. Now look at nobody gets into MIT, Brian. Does who walks around? That's probably where unicorns are actually. So nobody gets into MIT, but here's some other colleges that are excellent with need-based financial aid that maybe are a little bit more realistic from an admissions standpoint. Okay. So again, most of you guys have already set up your platforms. If you haven't, make sure you do. The link is is in the chat here, but that's kind of your quick crash course, and I'm well aware that I flew through that. But tonight the focus is more on admissions, and of course I'm happy to answer um, any questions that you all have for me that are financial related in the chat. But Brian, let's give the people what they came here for and talk about how we can start building this list of schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been answering a lot of questions in the chat, so I left a couple there for you, Matt, but a lot of good questions kind of surrounding national trends and some other things, but also just about early action and early decision. So we'll get into all of that. So my goal tonight is to give you guys a brief overview of what it's like to build a college list. But the first thing I want to say is that all of your processes are, or at least should be, unique in terms of how you do this. When I'm working with students, whether it's at BC High or with students that I'm working with College Aid Pro, there are students right now, even we're looking at a slide that says average college list falls between 10 to 14 schools. I had students that had lists, well, there were 5 schools this year because of their situation. I had students that had lists that were 22 schools this year, and that made sense for that individual student. And so I think kind of my first piece of advice is I'd say the most dangerous place for a parent during the college admissions process is the bleachers. Because what you're going to find is everyone's going to start talking to each other and they're going to be like, oh, we're doing this. No, we're doing this. We're doing this. Your process is your process. Now, yes, you can get good advice from maybe parents who have been through it before, things like that. But trust the experts more than anything. Trust yourself and trust your student. They're the ones who are going to be the drivers of this process. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the balance that works out these four, and we'll kind of move forward from there. So the first is kind of that academic balances, and I'm building a list with the students. The first thing I do is I get to know them, kind of who they are academically. So that's gaining an updated transcript and understanding their full, up to now high school career and what not only what grades they're getting, but also what classes they've taken them in and how are they successful, as well as how does that relate to the curriculum that's been offered to them at their high school. And so we're looking kind of at academic rigor and grades at the same point. Some people ask, like, do middle school grades count? They don't. It really starts in ninth grade. Even if you've taken, say, like a Spanish 1 in eighth grade, most times schools aren't going to really take that as a high school class. The reason being because you weren't taking a full high school curriculum during that time. So just a couple questions have come up about that over the past couple months. But anyway, so when I'm looking at this, I take a look at the student and their student profile. So ACT, SAT score, GPA as it relates to both kind of their weight, rigor if you're weighted, but also on a 4.0 scale. And then I look at really a 5-year history of the institution. I'd say within, if you're looking at admissions data, and at College Aid Pro, we do an excellent job of this. 5 years at most is kind of the shelf life of an admissions cycle before you get into data that really doesn't relate to who you
Sorry.
are as a student anymore. No, no worries. Or who you are as an applicant. That couldn't be even more true than currently right now. We're about to enter year 5 since COVID. Just like every other sector, college admissions was also turned on its head by COVID. And while we are reaching a balance of normalcy, numbers from 2018, 2019, certainly 17 and 16, they just don't really relate to the current industry trends at this point. But what I do is I look at that 5-year history and I try to find out where's the student fall within their averages. And this is kind of a hint I've given up, but when you go visit schools, you should never ask, what's the average GPA or what's the average SAT score? My final year at BU, we had 91,000 applications. If I just asked you, what was the average GPA of all those students that applied, it was about a 3.7. Now that gives you something It doesn't give you everything. If I ask you what was the middle 50% accepted average of the students that applied, I would have told you it was about a 3.4 to a 3.9. That gives you a much better idea of the type of student that's going to be admitted or potentially admitted into the school. And so looking at that data, a lot of schools will have this online, but you can also share this data. One of the, parts of my job and really all of my roles is to create relationships with the schools. And so that's how I'm able to find out this data, is through the contacts I have at those schools. If you fall into that middle 50% average, I would consider that a target school. It's a good fit for you. By no means it's a guarantee. You will never hear me guarantee admission to any school for any student, regardless of the profile, because I've just seen everything at this point. If you're above those 50%, I would call it a safety school, a school that we feel fairly confident in and we think is going to be a great fit. And then a reach school would be one that you're below those 50%, but by no means am I telling you not to apply there. One of the things I tell all the students I work with is it's not my job to tell you where to apply to and where not to apply to. It's my job to ensure that you have a well-balanced college list, whether it be the academic or the social piece, or as Matt's kind of talked about, the financial piece. So the idea of like, we're not going to not tell you to apply to Northeastern if you're applying to BU, but what we're going to tell you is by applying to Northeastern, we're creating some financial balance within your college list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Brian, and I think I don't know, either I heard it wrong or whatever, but I think it was what you meant to say, and again, maybe I just heard it wrong, is you don't tell anybody where to apply or where not to apply.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I
Yeah,
think the other thing here, tell me if you would second this, but this is what I say, and again, you can put me in my place here if you articulate it differently. But for these, Stanford, MITs, Harvards, these schools, right? And there's a very short list of them, right? I don't care who you are, perfect SAT, valedictorian, whatever. It's a reach school. That's
absolutely.
what I always
Yeah,
say. I
there are
don't know.
certain schools, I would say there's about 20 to 25 of them, but unfortunately it's the 20 to 25 that really do kind of dominate the storylines and the headlines, whether it be US News and World Report or the New York Times, or, there are a few schools in the news again right now for some antitrust lawsuits, but they're the ones that have single digit admit rates. There are excellent, excellent, incredible kids that every year do not get admitted to those schools. And so, if you're one of those students, by no means are we not going to apply them. We're going to you might be a student that ends up with a little bit larger of a school list, because we're going to make sure that we balance your list, that you not only have a number of safeties, but that we're even putting enough of those reach schools on there to create a balance. So, yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. So, there are so many different reasons of, why and how you have to get a deadline in. And so we could probably do a whole hour on admission deadlines, and we probably will in the fall. But it's not really the time for that. But know that how you're even applying sometimes weighs into whether a school is a target or a reach school. So great example. Matt and I were just talking just before we got on. Tulane University down in New Orleans, one of the more popular schools around the country, certainly a school that finds itself in the US News and World Top 50 every year. They are very well known that they use early decision in a very aggressive way. So again, early decision is that deadline that you apply, it's binding. They fill 2/3, if not more, of their class through early decision applicants. So for example, their admit rate in early decision last year was somewhere between 35 to 40%. Their admit rate in regular decision was less than 10%. And so depending on how you're applying to those schools, might have me put your, where you put it. So if we think you're going to apply early decision to Tulane, maybe I'm putting it as a target. But then later you decide like, hey, it might not be my top choice, or maybe it doesn't make sense financially for me to apply. Then we have to switch that to a reach, and maybe we're adjusting your list a little bit. Northeastern is another example. They use early action and early decision really aggressively. And so their regular decision rate is much lower. And so these are things that we're having conversations with our juniors right now as we're starting to build their list, by saying, hey, if you're going to apply to this school, like we probably have to apply early action if we really want a good chance. We can't hold off until regular decision. There are other items such as restrictive early action. These are schools like Stanford, Princeton, Harvard that don't have early decision, but they have REA. What that means is, you can apply to other schools, and it's not a binding agreement, meaning you can still wait till May 1st. You can wait to hear from other schools, but you do you can only apply to that school early. And so maybe you're limiting your chances. And this is again where strategy comes into play. Maybe you're thinking, I want to apply to Stanford restrictive early action, but I'm also interested in Northeastern or Tulane. Well, now we have to have a conversation because we know, based on our recent history of looking at admission statistics, that if you hold off to a regular decision for a Northeastern or Tulane or say a University of Virginia, UNC Chapel Hill, schools like this, your chances get much lower. So how much worth it is it to apply to that Stanford? These are really the minute details that we get into when we're building college lists when it surrounds deadlines. And we'll go through these and more, but then there's all these other pieces that come into the college admissions process. And I'll kind of go through some of them. So the first one that I think kind of stands out there is that test optional piece. And so, very quickly, test op, we've done a lot of webinars for it here at College A Pro, and we've been able to have students make really informed decisions. But your test scores play a huge role. Now, one of the things that I pride myself on as a counselor is I tell all the kids I'm working with is I'm going to make sure you are known for your 4 years and not for 4 hours, even though now it's closer to 2 on a Saturday morning. And so, but there are still schools that really value the SAT and the ACT. And a lot of those schools that maybe, or not maybe, did go test optional during COVID because they were forced to and did 3-year pilot programs have kind of reverted back to requiring test scores. Some did that this year. A lot will be doing it next year for the 25-26 application cycle. A number of the Ivies, not all of them. And so it gives you an idea of where, you're seeing a lot of the different schools kind of making their own decisions. It's not a true rule, but you're gonna see maybe the little further south you go and you start to look at schools maybe in the SEC, and then in Florida, you're gonna see more schools require test scores. But then you'll also see the complete opposite of that. The University of California state system, the biggest state system in the United States, is actually test blind. So what that means is even if you got a 1600 or a 36, they don't care. You're not putting it on your application. That's all based on grades. And so schools like Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, all of those, you're not sending your test scores to. So this is part of your list that we build as well. Okay, so you're a student who's maybe looking at some of those top schools and you're coming in somewhere between maybe like a 1250 to a 1350. Well, maybe we're going to send your scores to some of those schools and not to others. So we go school by school and try to make a determination of, we'll probably send your score here, we'll probably not send your score here. What we've gotten really good at is understanding that even schools that are test optional, there are schools that I would like to call maybe like test preferred. Schools like University of Virginia, Boston College, Georgetown, schools like this that, don't necessarily require scores right now. But ideally, even if you're a little below their averages, I want you to send your scores because they would like to see those SAT or ACT scores if possible. And so this all plays into how we build your list. Things like demonstrated interest are huge. As I said, I worked at BU. One of the things that BU values a lot is demonstrated interest. What is the interest that you are showing to the school by communicating with them in different ways? So this is not only email correspondence, but really more importantly, the work you're doing, meeting with the rep. One of the key parts of my job at BU was to travel to the areas of Texas and Oklahoma. That was my territory. And I would go every fall for about 8 to 12 weeks, and then another 8 to 12 weeks in the spring and meet with students, go to 4 to 5 high schools every day. And students who went to those visits and interacted with me, it made a difference, not only in terms of the grading, but even for schools who don't track demonstrated interest. And Matt's heard me say this before and ad nauseum, the more you make yourself a person in this process and less of a piece of the paper is the difference maker, because this is a human process. It is literally me sitting down and reading 100 to 120 applications a day and making determinations on those. And a lot of that comes to, oh, wow, I remember this kid. I remember when Matt came up to me at the college fair at Austin in October and told me that he was really interested in our physical therapy program and talked about how he was going to come visit campus and then shot me that thank you email. That applicant had now as a face and a name and a story, rather than if I never hear from you, or what a lot of schools call stealth, you're just a piece of paper and I'm judging you off the transcript and your essay, but I don't have that personal connection. This is a human process and it's important to remember that. And then there are a lot of other pieces. The one other big, I won't dive into athletics too much. Both myself and Matt are former college athletes. And so it's something that we talk with students all the time. It certainly adjusts the process for students. I'd say the other big one kind of occurring around schools right now is the increase in supplemental essays. And how does that play in building your list? And really, where that plays into is like, what is your strength as a writer? And then also, what is your capacity physically for writing all these essays with all the other stuff that you might be doing? One of the most difficult things about supplemental essays is you can't really get started with them until August because schools have the right to update their applications every year. And so I'm not going to work with an essay with a kid in, April of their junior year and then find out in August of their senior year that school no longer needs that essay. These are essays that are specifically asked by the schools to get to know you a little bit better, get to know your interest specifically in their institution. And 5 or 6 years ago, I would have students that maybe would have somewhere around 7 to 10 essays, be it both the increase in test optional movement, so schools needing to find other ways to evaluate students. And then I would say more importantly, not this past year, but the year before, the affirmative action ruling by the Supreme Court eliminating affirmative action in college admissions. What this did was schools then increased the amount of supplemental essays that gave students an opportunity to speak to their identity. I had students this year that had upwards of 35 to 40 additional supplemental essays that they had to write, all by the November 1st deadline, which is right now the most popular deadline in college admissions. And so you're thinking, really a wide variety of essays that you have to write. So it's not only, hey, can I write these because of the strength of the writer, and do I think I can brainstorm these? And this is something we help our students with. But then also, like, do I have the time to do this? And so many times we'd have this list, and then kids would start to prioritize, what schools they really liked. And we get to, school X, and I won't name a school because I don't want to disparage a school, but school X, and it's got 5 supplemental essays, and the kids look at the essay and they think like, maybe I don't want to apply here anymore. And it's not because they're lazy, but it's just like they're like, I don't think I can even answer these questions. And so it almost serves as kind of a reflective essay example as well too. And so I think a lot of different opportunities here and a lot of different ways that you're seeing. It's more than just like, hey, I want to go to school in the Boston area. Let's draw a circle. Those are the 10 schools I'm going to apply to.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of double click on what I think is a really important point, Brian, and I think something that is just that kind of inside baseball that you bring to our team, and then obviously our audience here, but is just this demonstrated interest to me is just not common knowledge, right? When people think about getting into college, they just think about, all right, I'm just gonna do everything, do the best you can with your everything you can control, which is your grades and so forth, which should be the focus, right? But then as you get serious at determining a college that you want to apply to, building that relationship with your admissions counselor is so vital, right? On two fronts. Brian focused on the and again, he's told us a million of these actual anecdotal stories of like, I died on a hill for this kid to get in based on the interactions that I had through the admissions process, right? And of course, that happens all the time for these 50-50 coin flip type of applicants, right? Um, Furthermore, I will say that's the admissions, advantage. There's a financial advantage here too, okay? Because it's very common that we will encourage our families to appeal, to negotiate for more money. It is common practice. Of course, we do it through the financial aid office, but we also do it oftentimes through the admissions office, which means merit-based scholarships. If a admissions counselor, the first time they're hearing from a student is, "Oh, I got into the school, can I have more money?" Okay, fair enough, nothing wrong with the ask, but do you think that they're going to try to advocate to give that student more money, or the student that they've had a rapport with for 2 years now, right? Since junior year, that says, "I got in, I'm so happy, but oh my goodness, we're so worried about the financial piece of this. Is there anything we can do? Is there anything you can do to help me?" And admissions counselors, even though we don't typically think of this, oftentimes have some say over the financial piece as well, right? Specifically merit-based scholarship. So I just, again, I can't emphasize that enough, and I hope that you all are hearing that. And the last thing I'll say here, and again, obviously I'm stepping on your toes a little bit, Brian, but another thing that you kind of at least opened my eyes up about, because I always thought with test optional, we're either going to send the scores or we're not going to send the scores. And then you told us for 90% of kids, we send them some places and we don't to others. It's not this, all or nothing in again, 90% of cases. So
Yeah, it's really unique that you're going to have a kid send their scores to everywhere or send them to nowhere. And it's obviously just kind of on the two ends of the extreme. Again, we try to make sure that regardless of what the strategy is, we're exuding your strengths in the process. But you're totally right, whether it be for admission statistics or certainly you're looking in terms of kind of like what kind of scholarship could the student get. The way I would kind of say it to students is I'm kind of like a lawyer trying to make a case for you. And the more pieces of evidence you can give me, the more cases I can make. And so then it's, many times when it gets to the scholarship phase, you've already been admitted and you're around, there's other students on the table that have also been admitted. So like the essay's already been read, the activities have already been led. The grades are the grades. You can't change those. And so now it gets into those anecdotals. How can this student, affect our community in a positive way? How are they going to bring their attributes that they have at their high school to our college community? And that's many times what got people through the door in terms of scholarships.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
So just, one of the things that I always tell families, and I've kind of hinted at a few of them now, there are these like front of the brain characteristics of a school that you should be thinking about as you're building a college list. And by no means are these not important. You're thinking about location. What's the size of the school? Both Matt and I went to smaller schools in New England. I think it's just maybe that's the case for a lot of New England-based people. We like our little communities, but maybe you're one of those people that you want to get lost on a big campus. You want to be in those big lecture halls. What's that campus type? Do you want to be right downtown in the city, or maybe do you want to be more of a suburban area, or maybe way out in the west or in the Midwest in a rural area? Do you want to live on campus, or maybe some students like that suitcase school feel where it's like, I'm there Monday through Friday, and then I'm doing my own thing on Saturday and Sunday. And then obviously, does it have the academic interest or the social or the athletic or the extracurricular interests that you're in? But then, really the back of the brain characteristics, and this is really the conversations I start to have with students is, it's not only, if you want to go to the next slide, Matt, it's not only, location, but like, what does the external location look like? So, what is the community that the school is located in? Are they welcoming to students? School I went to was a small business school in Rhode Island. I loved it because, it was in a small town, and the town really kind of depended on the school in many ways, and certainly its students for its local economy. So they were incredibly welcoming to our students. Now that's the case in most, but it's not always the case. And so, like, are you going to feel welcome as a student when you're walking down Main Street? Are there going to be places you can get a job? Is it easy to drive around the town? Things like that. Asking questions like, "What's your average class size?" Stuff like that. Obviously, great, but also like, what's your average class size after freshman year? What's your average class size for this certain major? What's your average lab size compared to your actual class size? These type of questions are important questions to be asking. Campus layout is one of my favorites. I say it at all my webinars. I loved that I could get up at 7:57 and make my 8 a.m. class. But that's not necessarily what everyone likes, And so some people want to go to a school, say like a Notre Dame, that has that Gothic architecture and sprawling campus, and it takes 15 to 20 minutes, but you're seeing all your friends as you're walking by. That really caters to them. And what are the academic buildings look like? Even the architecture sometimes. And I bring all these up because I think it's important for parents to hear that you're going to get frustrated at different times, maybe when you're on a tour with their student, about what they're latching on and what they're not latching to. And I say give them some time to find out what is important to them. One of the things that I always find funny, I'm the son of an educator, and my mom always laughs that this is my career because she remembers me on tours. Like, I didn't know what I was looking at either. And so allow these students to kind of formulate and give them some time on what is most important to them, and then find ways to tie that back to what you really value within schools as well too. But don't get frustrated if you go on a tour and you ask them what they liked, and the thing they say is like, "Yeah, I really liked the nachos. I thought those were really good." Like, that's a building block. Okay, it looks like the dining halls are important to my son. We're going to go look at other schools that are really well known for their food, and then maybe that's part of the social scene, and maybe that builds out. And so it's very different within that. Academic approach is obviously big. Are you one of those students that, wants to work in groups? Again, I went to a smaller business school. I'm an extrovert by trade. I love working in groups. I do like public speaking. So like, it was a perfect fit for me. That's not a fit for everyone. Some people would rather be maybe in a smaller classroom setting that, everyone's sitting around a table, like a Harkness like situation, and you're speaking. Or maybe you want to be one of those large lecture halls where you just, that you see in maybe in movies all the time, but some of those at large flagship universities where you're sitting in the back at a large lecture hall, and you're just a number, but that's what you want. You want to have that experience. And so it really depends. And then we've talked a lot about admission requirements and how that fits in, that it's more than just, hey, what's your average SAT score and what's your average GPA?
All right. So look at I want to and we'll take and I know there's at least one question in the chat for you, Brian, that is more
Yeah.
that's in your wheelhouse, not mine. So a couple things I want to talk about, and then we can get to some closing kind of questions as well. But what we're going to recommend, actually, let me stop sharing for a second, and then because I want to grab a couple of links, as a matter of fact. But here's what I'm gonna recommend that everybody take advantage of. And as Brian knows, who's been doing this with me for a long time, this is a first, but we're just gonna kind of experiment with it in the new year here. But generally speaking, we kind of talk about how we support people, how we work with families, and um, we talk about and you have the option to kind of work with us or not, and you got to make a decision, and that's that. We're trying to be I don't know, maybe a little bit more patient, if that's the word, this year. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. Let me do that. And so what this is I am where did my guys go? You're going to book a time with either Kevin Murphy or Jason Sloan on my team, right? These guys are on Brian and I's team, I should say. These guys are experts in this space. They've been doing it for an awful long time. If you take advantage of that, you have to book it at least this week, okay, for it to be free. You get 30 minutes with these guys, and there's a couple things that they can do for you. Number one, just kind of calibrate you in terms of where you at financially, are eligible for financial aid, how much, what's your SAI, kind of give you some real guidance there, and then walk you through what we do, how we work with families. You want to work with Brian directly, you want your student to take over, they will let you know exactly what that entails, exactly what it costs, etc. But let me give you a sneak preview here. And then I'm also going to talk about after what if you're just a DIYer and you're not the type of family or person or whatever that would wants to work with somebody one-on-one through this process. I'll talk about what we have for you there as well. So we have the services I'm going to talk about here, what we call our Wake Me Up When It's Over packages. Okay. We have a financial option, we have an admissions option, and then we have what's called a combination option. Little bit more about us. I mean, collectively, our team, 200 plus years of experience. We've guided over 100,000 families through this process. These are some of the logos, right? Of some of the folks that are on our team, right? We're fortunate to have the director of MIT, of Harvard on our team, the former director at USC, Brian, former director at BU admissions. We have the current director of scholarships at Oklahoma University. I won't go through all of it, but all that's to say is this is the team that we have. So yes, you'd be working with Brian one on one or Kevin, one on one, but we get to kind of rely on one another as a team. Just a couple statistics here that I think are meaningful, right? For people, if I was thinking about working with us, I would say, okay, you guys seem like good guys, seem like you know what you're talking about. What return can I expect on my investment with you? On average, families that work with us in one of our financial packages, they save $70,000 in our Wake Me Up When It's Over package. That's a conservative amount. That's why we can stand very tall on it, put it in print. It's data driven. It's very real, and again, quite frankly, it's conservative. We save you a meaningful amount of hours in this process. If you use one of our admissions packages, if you decide to work with Brian one on one, right, for with your student, with your family, 3 times more likely to get into your top choice. Again, does that guarantee you're going to get into MIT or Harvard? Nope. Brian said we don't use that word guarantee, but again, this is data driven, and I'll have more to share there in a second. Now, for our financial aid package. Oh, and by the way, let me just I'm going to put this, what you're looking at here. I'm going to put this in the chat so you can, have this yourself to review. And if you, and again, right through here, you can book a time or scan this QR code to book a time with Jason or Kevin. But for our financial aid, Wake Me Up When It's Over package, you have unlimited hours one-on-one with us, right? With one of our experts. We're going to help you build a list of schools that we know are going to be most cost effective. Who competes with one another? Who's going to give us the most in financial aid and scholarships? We do all the financial aid applications for you. We do your FAFSA. We do your CSS profile. If you apply to a Princeton or a U Chicago that has their own institutional applications, we do them for you. We worry about who needs what, where, when, how. Okay. The how's the mission critical piece. You got to think of us like having a really good accountant. How you present your situation to these colleges is going to dictate what you get in terms of deductions, right? To take the CPA term here, right? Discounts from colleges. How do you value your business? You have to do that even if you're a sole proprietor on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. You can't get that wrong. You're divorced or separated. That's a massive variable, right? You own your home. Most of these colleges you heard us talk about today, they consider that a checking account. How do we, how do we navigate that the right way? Okay, so again, and then once we get accepted into these colleges, how do we negotiate? We can't use that word. Okay, how do we appeal for more financial aid? How do we appeal for more scholarships? That's our first language. Okay, and then finally, how do we pay the bill? Right? If we have a 529, should we use it all up front? Should we spread it over 4 years? We need to borrow. Should we take it out in our kid's name, parents' name? Is it both? Right? These are massive decisions. Let us make sure that you're doing it correctly. So book some time so you can find out again if that's a good fit for you. The admissions piece, right? I kind of look at the I kind of look at the financial aid piece is we're grabbing the wheel for the parent or parents, right? We are taking over. Okay. On the admission side, this is really Brian grabbing the wheel with your student. Okay. And helping them just have a starting point that again is less focused on the financial side, more focused on just kind of them. What is the right culture fit, geographic fit, academic fit? Um, and the way that I describe it, because it's how it was explained to me in kind of layman's terms, this whole like admissions counseling piece is that these kids have worked their butts off basically for 16, 17, 18 years, right? They've built this amazing house, right? Everything, their grades, their resumes, their extracurriculars, their work, everything that's gone into building this house. But now in such a competitive environment, and I hate to say it in like a cynical way, but it's almost like it's not good enough. It's how you present your house. How do you market it, right? And that's, I think, where Brian really comes in and our admissions experts to say, okay, let's make sure that you're showing up on the right place in the internet and the house is staged perfectly, right? You've done the hard work. Now let me get you across the finish line here, right? And that's kind of what you're investing in. And again, as some, Brian is someone that's read, tens and tens of thousands of these essays. You have to nail those now, especially like he said, since the Supreme Court ruling, they're more important than ever. And again, it's mission critical. Do we send the test scores here or do we not? You want professional expertise that says this is exactly why you do it, where you send it, where you don't, etc. So, and we have a couple different packages, but where we say to at least get started because it's A, it's more cost effective, and B, it's going to be enough for a lot of families. Start with our kind of lower package, and you can talk to Kevin and Jason about the specifics, but it's covers 20 hours of Brian's time to again go through everything that I talked about, building the list and the essays and the applications themselves, right? Of course, we got to nail the Common App and the supplements, etc. Brian's going to know really early on if you're a family that's going to need more than that, right? If you're applying to 10 Ivies, right, and you're going to be doing, 30 essays, you're probably going to need, and then you guys can work out, hey, should we do it a la carte or should we go up to a bigger package, right? But this is a great place to start. And then, of course, we have families that are like, I would like both of those, right? You guys grab the wheel for us as parent or parents, okay? And then also Brian, grab the wheel in terms of the on the admission side, right? So these start. I'm sure we're kind of seeing it, but these start at $3,000, $29.99, okay, for these packages and up, right? But we can help when we get to learn a little bit more about you. We can help determine, what's the best fit for you guys. So again, make sure that you book a time. Just book a time tonight. Don't overthink that one, guys. Even if you do nothing, you're going to get value out of that 30-minute expert call. If you go to book a meeting right now on our website with one of our experts, you will see it's $300. Okay. And again, you can go kind of test me on that. It's either 349 if you get the technology, our software, and an hour, it's $349. Or if you just want a one-on-one hour with one of our experts, it's $300. This is a free 30 minutes. Okay. So you're going to get meaningful value out of it. And then again, too, if we think there's an opportunity where we can help you beyond this, we're going to share specifics. You heard me mention this. For some of you, you're a DIYer, right? You would never outsource. You're going to paint your house. You're going to tile your bathroom. You change oil in your car, right? You're never going to hire, a professional in kind of any capacity here. You know who you are. If that's you, at least sign up. Okay, at least sign up for our for the club as we call it, right? At least join the club, because you will get premium access to our software, right? In the free version, you can only put 3 colleges in there. You don't have access to the private scholarships. You don't have the ability to sort based on who's going to give you the most in financial aid, the most in scholarships. Again, if you go to sign up online, it's $149. This gets you in there for 25 bucks. Okay. And then it's $9.99 a month after that. So get in there for a month, see if it's meaningful value. I think you will find that it is. And if it's not, right, just you're out 25 bucks. Okay. And if you want to stay on again, it's 10 bucks a month after that. Everybody stays on, as they should, really through college and oftentimes beyond. Um, because I think we provide a ton of value in there. But again, it's 25 bucks if you sign up through this link here that's in the chat. Otherwise, it's 149 bucks. But in addition to the premium access of the software, if you join the club, there's all this great stuff. And again, this is for our members only. In the academy, line by line instructions through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile, bi-weekly office hours with our experts. We have our AI driven chat BGT in here. And then we have our member only workshops as well. So this one was kind of open to the public, but every other Thursday we do workshops that dive a little bit deeper, that are just for the members of the club, so to speak. So, but look, here's what you should not do. Don't do nothing. Yeah. Did I put the links in the chat? Yeah, the links are in the chat. They're not in the Q&A. They are in the chat. So sorry. So, let me put this one in the chat first because, or no, this one is kind of all encompassing here, guys. So at a minimum, right? Sign up tonight and talk to one of our experts, to Jason or Kevin. Again, you have to do that within the next week to get it for free. They'll help point you in the right direction. If you know you're just the DIYer, just get in the club, and at least take advantage of all that has to offer. And I think you'd be very happy with either. But Brian, any parting words for you, brother?
No, I think, for the 26ers, you're hitting that time. You're doing the right thing. And then for the
Yeah.
27s, good on you getting started. Go out there and see some campuses. I always tell our local families here in Boston, we have a little bit of advantage. There's a lot of campuses around, so you can see a lot. But even for those who, maybe you live somewhere that your son or daughter doesn't want to attend, but there's a couple campuses around there. Go see those campuses because maybe they know they don't want to go there, but there's some characteristics of that school that they like. And that's the starting point. Okay. I really don't want to go to UT Austin. I've lived in Texas my entire life, but I do like the feel of the big campus. And maybe I want to be closer to the ocean somewhere. All right. Well, maybe University of Maryland, College Park, or University of South Carolina, or UC Berkeley. Maybe that's more your field. Why don't we look at some of those? And so it's all a starting point. Find that starting point. And as I said, give your students kind of the credence and the allowance to find out what's most important to them. And we can certainly help with that too.
Yeah, and it's a great point where start now, take action, and whatever, wherever you fit in kind of the spectrum of how much help you want or don't, but at least take action. Because Brian, for example, his class of 2026 roster is almost full, right? Because not in order for him to have his impact, he has to get involved now, right? And then he will fill up, as he does every year, pretty quickly here. And then all of our counselors will fill up before spring-ish, right? They won't take clients after the spring. Class 2027, you guys have already started your base income year. It started 8 days ago, right? So you are right now in the tax year that colleges are looking at to determine your financial aid eligibility. Class 26, you just finished that year, right? Prior tax year. So I think oftentimes families feel like, oh, I'm way ahead of the game. Not necessarily. This is absolutely the time to take action. And again, you guys are doing it. You're here. You're engaged. Just stay engaged in some capacity. So appreciate your time, guys. Brian, always appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the week,
Absolutely.
brother. I'm glad you got some downtime, well earned, and we'll see you soon enough.